On a clear September morning, the world watched in horror. Terrorists attacked the United States. It was September 11, 2001. 19 militants associated with Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes. They crashed 2 planes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. The towers collapsed, killing thousands. Another plane struck the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C. The 4th plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania thanks to the heroic actions of its passengers. This day forever changed America. It also ignited the conflict between the United States and Afghanistan. The attacks were orchestrated by Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden was the leader of Al-Qaeda, a global terrorist network. He was being sheltered in Afghanistan by the Taliban. The US demanded that the Taliban hand over bin Laden. The Taliban refused. President George W. Bush declared a war on terror. To understand the conflict, one must understand the Taliban. Their roots lie in the ashes of the Soviet-Afghan War. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, the US supported the Mujahideen rebels. These rebels were fighting against Soviet rule. The US provided them with weapons and funding. This aid helped to drive the Soviets out of Afghanistan in 1989. But it also contributed to the rise of radical groups like the Taliban. After the Soviet withdrawal, Afghanistan descended into civil war. The Taliban emerged in the early 1990s. They promised to restore order and enforce Islamic law. The Taliban quickly gained control of most of Afghanistan. The initial phase of the war was marked by quick victories for the US and its allies, but the conflict soon bogged down into a long and bloody stalemate. The Taliban, though driven from power, proved to be a resilient enemy. They launched a guerrilla war against US and NATO forces. They used suicide bombings, roadside bombs, and ambushes. The US responded by pouring in more troops and resources. At its peak, the US had over 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. The war became a costly exercise in counterinsurgency. The US and its allies tried to win over the Afghan people. They trained Afghan security forces. They poured billions of dollars into reconstruction efforts, but progress was slow and often elusive. By 2011, the US strategy in Afghanistan shifted. President Barack Obama ordered a surge in US troops. He also set a timetable for the withdrawal of US forces. The goal was to hand over security responsibility to the Afghan government. US troop levels began to decline, but the Taliban remained a potent force. In 2014, the US formally ended its combat mission in Afghanistan. However, thousands of US troops remained in the country. They provided training and support to Afghan forces. The war had come at a tremendous cost. The US had spent trillions of dollars. The human cost, both American and Afghan, was immeasurable. In 2020, the Trump administration signed a peace agreement with the Taliban. This agreement paved the way for the complete withdrawal of US forces. In August 2021, the Biden administration completed the withdrawal.